What are you sipping on? Straight?
A tea for a change this time?
Yeah, we've been busy the whole day working, or is it just that we got delayed for the podcast to do it this evening?
Yeah, I think we just got delayed, Ramesh. Let's get started.
What have you been reading?
In fact, I want to ask you this, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about you're from a Google, ex-Googler?
Love Google always.
I know. I can see it every time. I see you starting up with saying that I'm ex-Googler. Like, what do you think will happen now with all the Gemini?
Zoogler.
Yeah, Zoogler. Like, okay, let's do it, Zoogler. What do you think? How do you think Google will handle the whole Gemini episode? Do you think they'll come back or?
They have everything to come back, right? Gemini has, Google has all the money, everything that is. But from whatever I have heard, right, it's, these things are also very cultural in nature because it had the core value. You know, when we were at Google, it always said, "Hey, do the right thing." So that was the cultural code that everyone sweat by to do the right thing. I don't know what it is right now.
Okay.
Google always believed that you could be an enterprise, but you have to have a startup culture inside. Maybe that has kind of diluted a little bit, which means more people, more functions. But we're talking about a company that is more than 100,000 people already, right? We're not talking about a 5,000 people company here. They have the money power. They have the technology behind.
Okay.
Sometimes, these errors just make for a better company.
Do you think they have the right culture now? Because in fact,
It's not hard to recreate, given that they have all the financial powers. That someone's just got to the board, go to the board and say, when I say board, I mean the whiteboard, and say, hey, we are on a mission to organize the world's information. And right now, the only way to do it is the AI way. If that is getting lost, then there's a problem. But if they show the money, right, and they have the technology and if they get the people to do it, I think they can come back. I think they can come. Think of it as a car which has been launched, but with a slightly faulty system. And then you just recalling the car, redoing the damage and putting it back on the road. So I don't see any reason why. A lot of people do, of course, talking about Google in the wrong way. Google is not probably capable. They've lost their edge. Their market cap is going down.
yeah, I think more than. Maybe we can just get into the next one, but more than the capability, Ramesh, right? It's more of the company's approach to the whole AI with Gemini.
Yeah,
has completely gone wrong. It's just backfired.
When
right?
BART went wrong, then you have the Gemini. They represented Gemini and they launched Gemini.
Right.
The pictures were probably out of place. It happens.
But it also reflects the culture in the company, right? It is not It is not about the technology. They have the technology. It shows up. Probably they are the best one to have the technology per se.
Yeah, they have the money.
But it also reflects that there's a group of people within the Google who's really setting the tone for these things, right? And of course, they have now turned off the image generation, for now. But of course, the text.
But
text
think
is
about
also
it,
not.
This is the company which got the images absolutely backward with Google Photos. So you can't. They're probably the leading AI company has compared where photos actually meant, because Google Photos is just phenomenal, right? So I think it's a matter of time that they would come back.
Yeah, of course. They would definitely come back.
And you can never take a Googler out of a Zoogler.
No, of course they will come back. That's what everybody wanted them to come back, because we don't want this space to be just run by two large vendors we need a Google to compete with the likes of OpenAI and Microsoft and all the people, right? But what is more challenging is not the technology.
Yeah,
it's more about culture.
I hear you. I think
right?
Culture eats everything for breakfast.
Because a lot of times when large companies grow,
breakfast.
Yeah.
And in this case, I think culture is something that they got to get right.
Yeah, it's applicable for a lot of companies. I mean, when there's this whole, I've not sure what about the curse of culture, right? Large companies pick that up, right? The curse of culture is real, right? And hopefully, Microsoft,
they will come back. I am hoping so. Okay. And with that, welcome to yet another episode of Reset to Zero. Myself, Ramesh, and Srivatsan, we are co-founders of High Performer AI, and we talk about a lot of things in the technology companies. And here we are with yet another episode. So, what are we eating today for tea?
Yeah, welcome back to the pod. I think today, Ramesh, I was just reading this interesting post which talked about, Mark Anderson's start, right?
What does he say? What does a great man say?
And the whole, I would say, insight is that the idea that many successful companies began with the product and not with just a business plan or probably a company, right? It's just a thought which really challenges a traditional thinking. Which is typically you would start a business and then you start figuring out what product to sell, right? That's
Do you think that's relevant? It's a profound statement, but is it still relevant?
I mean, I would say like both of them are relevant, but I mean that's what I want to really bring to the point here is that when you say that, hey, I think today's world, let's talk about what's the today's world. Specifically, typically software companies, SaaS companies, you go back and look at companies like Facebook, Google, not Google, at least even Google, Meta, you name all of them, or any company even starting up today, would start up with a problem.
Back in the day, yeah, when Eric and Sergey, when they started the company, it was all about organizing the world's information. So they put up a search engine very quickly. In that sense, you're right. Mark Zuckerberg kind of worked in the dorm and wanted to get the entire student population on a single platform. So that went right as well. Talk about any company. Yes, these are products that have done really well in the market. They've set the tone and probably leading the way. You probably have Mark has a point.
No, this is the whole story, right? See, what comes first, right? Typically,
chicken or the egg.
Yeah, typically, at least in a world where you look at VC funded startups, right? I would say naturally filter the companies which start with business first or company first, and then they figure out what to do. Versus today, most of the companies they would tend to start with a problem statement where it would be a customer pain point.
Translates into a product
which would solve it, would have the need, and then it results into a business, right? That's
very true. I think that's in the VC word tree.
Yeah.
I think that is most prevalent because while the VC companies are certainly betting on the founders for sure, but you just can't go there and say, hey, put money on me and we'll figure out what to do next.
Just do this,
right? And those are very few of them who probably have gone, but that's far and few. Typically, that's probably how we started as well to a large extent. But let's talk about what are the advantages of doing so, right? Versus, we'll come to traditional. We've given you've given great examples of Google, Meta, all of them starting up as a product and then getting them. What's the flip side?
Yeah, the flip side is only one of them, right? You start the business with a lot of capital by virtue of creating a long runway.
Why do you call it the traditional model?
Because typically in a traditional model, like where you basically start with a company, traditional could be like take an example of Reliance, right? Or any other company. I would say a company which already has established, who has already been successful with one or two products. Another example is Microsoft.
Yeah.
How did Microsoft choose to enter the cloud business? Even before you were, I'm just talking about, they probably like 10, 15 years back, they saw the AWS winning.
But that's not what you're saying. You're saying companies typically start off as a product and they end up becoming a company. And that's the success story that is generally spoken about.
Yeah, that's a 0 to 1 problem, right? See,
right.
Like you said, you asked me for the flip side. See, when somebody starts a company, I think the only way or the best way to start a company is to identify a customer problem. In fact, that is, I think, be the point which we ought to hit to most of the founders is that it's not about building a business, right? It's about nurturing a product which will solve a critical customer problem, right? Only when we take that approach, we could really get into the product market fit and all of that can happen. Then you can have growth.
Fair enough. So you're saying if you are a VC run company, if you want to get funding, right? If you are in the 0 to 1 stage, you typically identify, and that becomes a founder's passion, obviously, to go after. And then you create a product out of it, and that you see a lot of takers, and eventually it becomes you form a company out of it. And very true.
Yeah, you build a business out of
it. And the flip side, the traditional way to do it is, okay, now I start a company and I'll figure out what needs to be done. So you could go the service way, where you
typically
I have a manpower, I have the ability to get a lot of things done. So I hired a few developers, few for web development, and then someone for app development, and you create a company. And you end up creating a company that way, right? So you start a company and then you start creating the products.
Very true. I think the example you gave as an IT service provider or an MSP, they would start a business because from their past client, they know they have a captive customer base. They would start the business, and it's a people business. Then they basically start going about hiring people and going after projects they can solve. But when it comes to software business, right? the only way you could be successful, at least in the current, world order, right? Understand the customer problem. You should basically be fascinated and passionate about the problem you are solving. Build a product which can basically solve for it, and then you build a business out of that, right? That's basically the
question. Let me ask you a question there. While that's very well summarized, is there a question of capital availability in this case? So does that mean that, hey, if you don't have capital, but you see a customer pain point, you turn it into a product, you turn that, and then you form a company, and then you're inviting people to fund your business,
right?
And therefore, that's the question is, hey, if I have to run this company for X number of years, then I need a runway, and I see huge potential in this company. So you kind of get that funded through Exim. Whereas, does it mean that, hey, I have enough capital, I don't know what to do with it, I need to throw that because traditional businesses, right? Where when you say traditional, I would assume that not too many people are in the VC world. So you start a company, I have a business, let me put that out, and then if the service funds the company, when I say that, hey, I get a project, I have 5 minutes under them, and then that will fund my existing business as well.
Yeah, you could look at it that way, but Ramesh, if you just take a step back, capital is only the means to the end.
Okay.
It just can get you faster, right? But the most important thing it does, you could run a business, you could build a business without even external capital, right?
You're a traditional business. You're saying you start a company without capital?
I would basically, I'm not saying capital. You need to have capital. Either you self-fund it, or you basically have your own product funded, so you are optimizing for growth.
Correct.
See, the reason like somebody will go out for a external capital, is to basically accelerate growth, right? Mm-hmm. And you could choose to basically go to a VC, or you seek for external capital, right? Okay. In a bootstrap setup, you are self-funded, or you would wait for your customers to fund it. Even in both the cases, the most important thing is to basically identify the problem, which is worth solving, and identifying a problem which a customer would be willing to pay for, and then you build a business around it, right? Whether you want to do it really quickly, then you probably might want to get external funding.
So what she's saying is, you don't necessarily, it's not dependent on capital. It's just a modern way versus a traditional way of doing a business.
Correct.
But let me ask you a question over here. What if you are looking at the next, right? Every company, successful company has been running, and suddenly there is an AI boom. Everyone wants to jump into that bandwagon. So do existing companies create another company, or do they say, okay, let me go and figure out an AI product? What do you think is happening here? Because that's what we're seeing right now.
Interesting question. Basically, the AI is I think we briefly had a chat in the last pod as well, right? The AI, evolution of AI and how you look at LLM models is very similar to how, the whole cloud came, about 10, 15 years back. It is just an infrastructure technology, right?
Okay.
The problem to be solved is still valid. Even if there's a new company, an existing company would want to first identify what problem they want to solve. Then they might look at how better I can solve with AI, right? It's just a means. But at the end of the day, whether I want to use a vehicle, which is like, which has, let's say, 200 horsepower, or whether it has 2000 horsepower, it's what you will kind of choose the platform under the hood. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, right, will that be a vehicle for passengers, whether it will be for a school bus, or is it going to be a sports car? Is something you have to decide first, right? What problem does it solve? And that problem is what needs to be emphasized more,
okay,
right? And you will also have to choose a problem which people will be willing to pay when you solve for it, right? That's the most important thing. And then you build a business, whether you use AI for solving the problem or using a traditional non-AI tech for solving it, is all kind of irrelevant, at least in this context. But having said that, we can take it again, go back to the example of Microsoft, right? Where when they were already established business, because they already had built the Microsoft, the Windows OS, which was basically a problem first business. But when they looked at, let's say, Azure, when they want to build Azure, it is not a problem first, but the way they looked at it, it's an opportunity for them to expand. And they looked at that as an opportunity, let's say 15 years later or 20 years later, right? Would the world still be on-prem?
Would it be, in that case, fair to say that in this new age world, when you're looking for a 0 to 1 or 0 to 10 or 1 to 100, you go with the means of saying getting a product, getting it really solid, forming a company, taking that to new heights, getting to 100. But then after, when you solve for 1 to 100, you're thinking, how else can I expand the TAM? Then you start another company and it's a completely new product. And because you gave an example of Microsoft started with Windows OS and then the Microsoft Office suite and the browser and everything else. And today you're looking at saying Azure, wow, this is a huge space where probably competition, though I can fund this with my existing kind of products and I can start a new company. And it is, you think it's fair? So what I'm trying to ask is 0 to 1, it's a product play. 1 to 100, 1 to 10 and 10 to 100 is continuing to be superior in terms of product. And then you plunge into a company-based outlook and say, start a product then.
Yeah, because the way it will work is, Ramesh, the moment you basically become a considerable size in business, you also need to protect your business, right? You'll pretty much do anything and everything to identify, the competition is, to win the competition, to stay relevant in the business, right? As the result, you would still choose to solve another problem, right? So that's what Microsoft did, right? They basically are the one who built the whole, the on-prem business by giving Microsoft Exchange, Microsoft servers, on the Windows things.
Yes.
But they saw a trend in the market coming in, which they would have predicted that they would be replaced if they don't adapt to the new trend, new problem.
That's a great point.
And then they started solving for the problem, right? Because they have the capital, they could exist on both the sides, right? But the good example for a contradicting thing of what we're talking about is a service company.
Right.
Service company would go talk to a customer, right? They would sign up for a customer first and they try to do everything possible. And that's the reason a lot of times, if you be part of a service company, you'll feel that it's a step, it's a 2-step forward and 1 step backward. Because the moment that particular customer leaves, you will figure out how you will rehash that resources you have into a different customer.
Right.
2
step forward, so take 1 step backward.
Right. That's the way I would look at service business, right? Because it is always people business, and you're dependent on 3 customers, 4 customers, right? It is also very successful, right? But that needs a different DNA to run. The insight which we've been talking about is more relevant for a software company, right? More relevant for a company which is basically building products online, right?
Right.
And then trying to, build a business around it, right? And
how do you, that brings me to a very tangential question, and we'll come back to this topic here. How does it happen when the entrepreneurial journey, in case of creating a product, is very, obviously entrepreneurs are passionate, right? So when you're passionate about the idea, how does that work?
That's
Because you have an idea and you think it's going to be changing, then you start a company. What happens there?
No, I think, Ramesh, that's the whole crux of the point, right? That's the heart of entrepreneurship, right? Isn't it, right?
Yes,
that's the real thing. Because you should be passionate about the idea, right? Not starting company. In fact, a lot of times what we also might end up seeing is that a lot of people wanted to start a company, right? And that becomes their drive for starting something, right? If we end up doing that, you might find it very challenging to find a business around it, right? Because you would have less importance or priority on identifying a problem which will really solve customers' pain point. That's the whole idea. Which means that if you want to be a really successful entrepreneur, go look for your idea. Go get passionate about the idea. Love the idea which you think is important for a customer, right? That's the real kick.
I have so many questions, but the one thing that I want to kind of put you on the spot is, this is your second time entrepreneurship and I'm involved in it, so we'll keep the question for later.
Okay.
But in your first stint as an entrepreneur, what was the idea that you were really passionate about, that you built a product and then a company around it later?
So I think the way it worked last time, right? I was it was early in my stage where, I was pretty close to the problem because I've been working on the storage space. I kind of figured out that, hey, disaster recovery was a pain point. A lot of people were struggling because it was all on-prem. And I could see that there is a cloud infra coming in. Then the problem statement we had is that, hey, how do we solve this backup and the recovery, in a much more elegant and easy way? So we started doing it in the cloud. That's how we started, picking up the problem and the way we want to solve it. Then we basically figured out customers, right?
Okay.
We figured out a lot of MSPs and IT service provider who are offering backup and disaster recovery to their clients. And that's when we started, making them as a customer, and that's when you build the business.
Right.
So, I would say the same thing happened with the high performer, right? So we kind of clearly understood the market, right? The market would need a product which will help business to build their social presence, and that's the pain point because today a lot of business entrepreneurs are struggling to basically build their social presence consistently. Right? The key word is consistent. So that is the pain point we are going after, right? That's what we're passionate about. And our solution will evolve in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more for what Sri is saying. So for all the budding entrepreneurs out there and an idea, I'm sure all of you have an idea, get passionate about the idea, get in really deep. How will solve for business can come in different directions, right? It's a matter of the narrative that you're talking about, it's the product, the features and everything else. So the idea transforms into a product that you have to make a business out of it, and a company will naturally evolve.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and also remember, it's not just about starting a company.
Yeah.
Right? This is about bringing a solution to life.
There you go.
Right? That's the most important thing. Right? So I think that's where entrepreneurs have to be passionate about. Right? Not about starting a company. And that would be my takeaway from what I would say, what I learned from the Mark.
And listen, Mark is really inspired us over here, as you can see.
Right.
So, again, a reminder to all of us, as we are all budding entrepreneurs getting ready for the next big thing, whoever was there, so get passionate about the idea. And then work on a product that will help you at least get people to listen to. Funding is much better. It's easier. People can, who relate to your idea will obviously be willing to bet on you, and then you create a product or eventually you end up starting a company and reap its benefits.
Yes.
If that is the order of his day.
Yeah, and also we hope our discussion, which sparkles some new ideas, which will enable to start a new venture.
Absolutely.
That's a way, that's the whole idea. So,
and we did drop in quite a few things about high performer as well. So you might, in case you kind of missed that, Sri, what was the idea? You want to reveal what the idea was and how it turned into a product, and then this company here right now?
No, I think, that's an interesting question, Ramesh. I think, it was between me and Ramesh when we were basically trying to, put something as a side hustle, the Grow Store XYZ, right?
Yeah.
Where we started writing. That was basically is what we were thinking. In fact, our initial thought process was something else. That's when we realized a real pain point, One is writing content. That was hard, very challenging. There is a point where after we kind of started writing about the topics of our interest, which we were comfortable, we were struggling to write more, right? That was a reality, right? The second problem was even more larger. How do we distribute it successfully was like such a big pain. So these were the two pain really translated into high performer today.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Then we spoke to a lot of other people. We spoke to a lot of creators, a lot of businesses, a lot of founders. We found consistently that there was a problem, in terms of creating good quality content consistently. Correct, right? Second, able to kind of elevate the social presence, right, over a period of time was a real pain, right?
Because a lot of the time we'll also be judged of, hey, this content, good content, can I put that out? First of all, content creation is a problem. And once you create it, you're doubting yourself. And then third is, even if it goes out well, is it going to my relevant audience? Is my audience big?
Correct. So that was a pain point, right? That pain point, once we basically, picked the pain point, then we started digging into it, understanding more context.
Then we found the company.
Then we set up the company.
Right.
In the process of building a business around it. But the most important thing is to solve for the pain point, which customers will be willing to pay. And I would say this is the journey we are going through right now, Ramesh, right? That's
right.
We are trying to build a product, a solution which customers would basically love. In essence, we're trying to bring the solution to life.
Correct.
And hopefully that will translate into a successful business.
Absolutely. And
right?
Yeah, and it says when you're really passionate about the idea, this is what Sri and I keep talking about day in and day out. How do we make this idea into a product and then make this a successful company?
Business.
Right? For here to last. Cool. So that's all we have for this edition of Reset to Zero. So thank you very much for listening in.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining and looking forward to the next one. And in the meantime, any thoughts on if you think you're going to talk about something else, some other topic, just add a note and we'll be happy to talk about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.